was a full police escort out front, a black, discreet minivan in the middle. That's a funeral home removal van. And yes, they often look like everyday minivans. And right behind it is the medical examiner's car, right there. That detail is crucial. In cases of homicide, the body does not go straight to the funeral home. It goes first to the medical examiner for a full autopsy.
Can you just add us up to the case documenting that there was no autopsy?
And 287, I'll be clear to the hospital.
I need an officer at Timpanogos Hospital to come stage in the emergency room bay.
A doctor confirmed there was a bullet in Charlie Kirk's body. Law enforcement recovered a rifle from the woods with one spent casing still in the chamber. Two facts that should connect perfectly, except for one glaring problem. Nobody has ever proven that bullet came from that gun. No ballistics report. No forensic match. No lab analysis showing the striations on that bullet align with the rifling in that barrel. Just a doctor's confirmation, a rifle held up for cameras, and a public told to connect the dots themselves. That missing connection isn't a small detail. In forensics, it's everything. Without it, we don't have a murder weapon. We have a stage prop and a story that people were told to believe. Before we tear apart why this matters so much, I need you engaged in this investigation. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from, because what I'm about to show you is going to shake your faith in how evidence gets presented in high-profile cases. If you're back here again, thank you for refusing to accept convenient narratives over hard science. New viewers, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This isn't about chasing viral moments. This is about demanding that justice be built on proof, not performance. Every like, every share, every comment creates pressure to release the forensic evidence they've been withholding. We're building toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and that milestone represents a community that refuses to let silence replace science. Inside that emergency room, chaos was drowning out everything. Machines screaming, medical staff shouting orders, every second fighting to save a life that was already slipping away. But in all that noise, one voice cut through with absolute clarity. The attending physician confirmed there was a bullet lodged in Charlie Kirk's body. Not a suspected bullet. Not a possible projectile. A bullet. Physical, measurable, undeniable. That confirmation should have become the foundation of everything that followed, because in homicide investigations, the recovered projectile is the starting line. It tells investigators caliber, trajectory, manufacturer characteristics, and most critically, which weapon fired it. That bullet carried microscopic striations carved into its surface as it traveled through a gun barrel, unique markings that serve as a forensic fingerprint linking projectile to weapon. Every detail on that piece of metal should have been documented, photographed, and analyzed within hours of extraction. The doctor's confirmation wasn't just a medical observation, it was the creation of the single most important piece of physical evidence in the entire case. But here's what should trouble everyone. After that moment in the ER, that bullet seems to vanish from the public narrative. The doctor confirmed its existence and then silence. No photographs released showing the projectile. No preliminary reports about its condition. No statements about whether it remained intact or fragmented on impact. That bullet should have been the star of this investigation, the undeniable truth that anchored every subsequent finding. Instead, it became a footnote, mentioned once in the emergency room, and then buried under the spectacle of what came next. Hours after the doctor confirmed the bullet, law enforcement staged what looked like a victory lap. Cameras were positioned, reporters were summoned, and in a wooded area near Utah Valley University, investigators unveiled what they wanted everyone to believe was the smoking gun, a Mauser .30-06 bolt-action rifle. The presentation was theatrical. Gloved hands carefully lifting the weapon, one spent casing visible in the chamber, 3 live rounds still loaded and ready to fire. Scattered around the recovery site were additional shell casings, and here's where the performance really escalated. Those casings had been engraved with taunting messages. Words carved into brass like a killer's calling card. News outlets devoured the imagery. Within hours, that rifle was plastered across every major network, every news website, every social media feed. Headlines screamed about the murder weapon being recovered. Commentators solemnly discussed the engraved casings as evidence of premeditation and malice. The narrative wrote itself: troubled shooter, symbolic ammunition, case closed. But strip away the drama and you're left with a fundamental problem. Finding a rifle near a crime scene doesn't prove that rifle fired the fatal shot. The staging was impressive, the symbolism was chilling, but none of it constitutes forensic proof. That spent casing in the chamber? Meaningless without comparing it to the bullet recovered from the victim. Those engraved messages? Theater that tells us nothing about whether this weapon caused Charlie Kirk's death. The rifle became a symbol before it became evidence, and that's exactly backwards from how investigations should work. Science first, narrative second. Instead, we got narrative presented as science, and the public was expected to accept the connection without proof. Here's how ballistics actually works, stripped of all the complexity. Every gun barrel is manufactured with spiral grooves cut into the interior. That's the rifling that makes bullets spin for accuracy. During manufacturing, microscopic imperfections are created in those grooves, making each barrel unique. When a bullet travels through that barrel, the metal is soft enough that those imperfections leave distinctive marks called striations. Forensic ballistics is the science of matching those striations. Investigators fire test rounds from a suspect weapon into ballistic gel or water tanks, then recover those test bullets in pristine condition. Under a comparison microscope, they place the test bullet next to the bullet recovered from the victim and examine the striations side by side. If the patterns match, if the microscopic scratches align like pieces of a puzzle, you have scientific proof that specific bullet came from that specific gun. This isn't theoretical. It's been accepted science for over a century, used in thousands of cases, refined to the point where ballistic matches are considered some of the most reliable forensic evidence available. The process is straightforward, the results are reproducible, and when done properly, the connection between bullet and barrel becomes undeniable. So here's the problem that should alarm everyone. In Charlie Kirk's case, none of that science has been made public. No comparison microscopy results. No forensic report detailing the striations. No laboratory statement confirming the bullet recovered from his body came from that Mauser rifle displayed for cameras. Without that ballistic match, the entire case rests on proximity and assumption. The rifle was found near the scene, therefore it must be the murder weapon. That's not forensics, that's storytelling. The gap between what was shown and what should have been proven is staggering. Law enforcement had every opportunity to demonstrate scientific certainty. They could have released the ballistics report showing matched striations. They could have provided comparison photographs of the test bullets next to the recovered projectile. They could have brought in independent forensic experts to verify their findings. Instead, the public got spectacle. A rifle held up for cameras like a trophy. Engraved casings photographed for dramatic effect. Press conferences where officials spoke with confidence about having recovered the murder weapon, but never backed that confidence with hard data. This absence is deafening. In high-profile cases, forensic evidence is typically released to counter speculation and establish legitimacy. Prosecutors want airtight cases built on undeniable science. Defense attorneys demand access to ballistic reports to challenge the evidence. Media outlets request forensic documentation to verify claims. Yet here we are with none of that transparency. The bullet exists, the doctor confirmed it. The rifle exists, cameras captured it. But the bridge connecting them, the scientific proof that should transform suspicion into certainty, has never been revealed. That silence where there should be data isn't just frustrating, it's dangerous. Because without forensic proof, we're being asked to convict based on narrative rather than evidence, on performance rather than science. This matters beyond just one case. The foundation of criminal justice is supposed to be proof beyond reasonable doubt, and in shooting cases, that proof comes from ballistics. When that standard gets eroded, when spectacle replaces science, when the public is shown props instead of proof, the entire system becomes vulnerable to catastrophic errors. Wrongful convictions don't just destroy innocent lives, they leave actual criminals free to commit more violence. They corrode public trust in law enforcement and courts. They create precedents where future cases can be built on theater instead of evidence. Every time the system asks citizens to believe without proof, it weakens the foundation that separates justice from vengeance. Ballistics isn't guesswork or interpretation. It's one of the most exact sciences available to investigators. The procedures are standardized: trajectory reconstruction to understand the angle and distance of fire, ballistic gel testing to analyze impact dynamics, microscopic comparison to match striations between bullets and barrels. These aren't optional extras, they're fundamental requirements for proving a weapon caused a specific death. In Charlie Kirk's case, none of these results have been made public. No trajectory analysis showing the bullet's path from rifle to victim. No impact testing demonstrating the Mauser's bullets produce wounds consistent with Kirk's injuries. No microscopic comparison proving the fatal bullet passed through that specific barrel. The silence in place of this data isn't just suspicious. It's a violation of the transparency that justice demands. Because when courts and investigators ask the public to accept conclusions without showing their work, they're not administering justice. They're performing it. So let me be direct about what this means. A rifle without forensic proof isn't evidence. It's a stage prop. The engraved casings aren't smoking guns. They're theater. And the gap between what should have been proven and what was actually shown represents a fundamental failure in how this case was presented to the public. This doesn't mean Tyler Robinson is innocent. It doesn't mean the rifle recovered wasn't the murder weapon. It means we don't know, because the science that should answer those questions has been withheld. And in a system that claims to value proof over suspicion, that withholding is unacceptable. The implications extend beyond courtroom proceedings. If forensic evidence can be implied rather than proven, if dramatic presentations can substitute for scientific verification, if the public can be convinced by spectacle rather than data, then every future case becomes vulnerable to the same erosion of standards. The precedent being set here is that confidence and staging can replace proof, and that's a precedent that will destroy more than just one investigation. So I'm asking you directly, are you comfortable with a justice system that shows you props and expects belief? Are you willing to accept that critical forensic evidence can be withheld while officials assure you they've solved the case? Or do you think the public deserves to see the science that supposedly proves the connection between bullet and barrel? Share your thoughts in the comments, and tell me where you're watching from. This conversation matters because it defines whether we demand proof or accept performance, whether we insist on science or settle for spectacle. If this investigation revealed the gap between what was shown and what should have been proven, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We need to keep pressure on this case until the forensic evidence is released. Every subscriber represents another voice demanding transparency, another person refusing to let silence substitute for science. The question isn't complicated. Where is the ballistics report proving that bullet came from that rifle? Until that question gets answered with hard data instead of confident assurances, this case remains built on theater rather than truth. A rifle displayed for cameras isn't evidence, it's a prop. Engraved casings aren't proof, they're symbolism. And the absence of forensic verification isn't a minor oversight, it's a fundamental failure in how justice should operate. Your engagement isn't just about views or algorithms. It's about creating pressure that makes withholding forensic evidence impossible. It's about building a community that refuses to accept convenient narratives when hard science should be available. It's about demanding that the system show its work instead of expecting blind faith. So the final question is simple. Will you settle for spectacle, or will you stand for truth? Because silence where there should be science isn't justice. It's the loudest admission that something crucial is being hidden. The bullet is undeniable. The rifle is undeniable. But the connection between them? That's where the case either stands or collapses. And right now, in the absence of forensic proof, it's collapsing under the weight of its own silence.